Hello, John. Welcome to Amsterdam. You've been here before, I guess?
Several times.
Yeah. Anything particular you like about Amsterdam?
The architecture. It's rather obvious. The people are nice to see.
Big difference with where you come from, Canada?
It's quite a difference.
What's the main difference?
There isn't the same amount of culture. It's quite a cultural difference.
And in the way people act and react to each other?
Mm-hmm. So, for Amsterdam, there's a bigger mind.
A bigger mind than back home in Canada? Okay, I would guess the other way around. That people here in... Well, I know what you mean. You mean less narrow-minded than...
Just broader-minded.
And open to talk.
Broader-minded, yeah.
Yeah. Could you say Dutch people are more uptight than people over in Canada? Because
yeah.
And maybe that's why we're like searching for enlightenment, whatever you want to call it, to get out of that tightness.
That's possible.
The message you tell to people over here of all over the world, is the message the same, or do you tune into like the culture of a country? Do you tell people in Germany? Do you bring it to people in Germany in a different way than over here in Holland, or is it a universal message?
Some places are different. The message isn't really different, but it's adapted to the person. So the more direct someone is, that changes it. If the people tend to come at something in a roundabout kind of way, then it takes more to bring them in a sense.
But that's not bound to a country. That's just a personal thing. Yeah. So you don't, when you talk to people.
This is somewhat a country.
When you talk to people, it's not talking to a group. It's talking to one person at a time. Then, to make sure the message gets through.
Yeah.
Isn't that really exhausting?
No, it's not exhausting. It's just responding to what is there in that person. Whatever level is open within them, then speaking to that level, and then beginning to speak to what is just beneath that level that they're familiar with, so that they can still see it, perceive it, have a sense of it, and follow into something that they're knowing the truth of.
Mm-hmm. Is there a difference between, let's say, the Friday and the Saturday evening when you give a talk? Is the first evening for people who just came in touch with the subject, and the Saturday for the more advanced, and the Sunday for the, again, more advanced, or is it all mixed?
It's more mixed, but people do begin to settle in after a couple of meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also, after a day or two, there's an obvious, more of a group feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just settling within themselves, but settling in together with others.
Is there any danger of sitting in the back at visiting these kind of things? It looks like very safe. When I sit in the back, I just shut up. I don't have to ask anything. How does that work? People have to have a willingness to hear your message and to also be open to your response.
It's not really a danger. Some people are just really checking out one place and another place, in a sense sitting back and trying to find out, what is this about? What is this person talking about? What is the reality of this? And trying to find out. what would be more of a danger is not so much sitting back or sitting in the back, but taking on something that they're realizing is true, so then really knowing something, and then instead of applying it and really living it, just going from place to place to place and becoming increasingly insulated from really responding deeply within to what they're knowing.
And the risk is that they just hear it and then...
Then it becomes increasingly a mental thing, so there's a safety that's developed to keep from surrendering to something that's really clear within, that's really seen.
For me, it was a risk for a couple of years just visiting these kind of meetings, satsangs. It felt great, and then it was like a movie. I went out of the theater and then forgot all about it. Do you meet a lot of those people who come to your meetings for years and years and they just see it as a little nice break from daily stress?
For some it's like that. There's so many different kinds.
Yeah. And you don't get angry at those people that you say, oh, you come for all those years. Why don't you live it? No.
For some people, they come for it's sort of like a fill-up. It helps them in their life. It brings them to a deeper place. It helps them to regain perspective concerning things that are deeper, and that helps them. So then that's good.
And when someone is in the audience with a pen and a paper and writes down everything you say, do you encourage that, or do you say, well, it's not about the words or not about remembering everything I said precisely?
It's not first about the words. It's first about the transmission that's there, the deeper sense that they'd be recognizing of something that they're realizing within. The words can help to form something of a scene and an understanding, and to form something of a living concept of what's being experienced. So in that way the words are good.
But you don't have to remember everything that's being... Should you forget everything that's being said? Or...
Not that either. It's not about remembering every word, and it's not about forgetting all the words.
Well, some teachers talk about Jesus who wrote it in the sand, and then the sea could wash it away, so they couldn't make a book out of it. They did, obviously, but so that's not such a problem. The words.
No.
How did this come about for you? Were you suffering for a lot of years before you started to follow this path?
No.
But mostly people suffer, and then they think, oh, I've got to get rid of the suffering, rid of the pain, get rid of my depression. Then they come to you. Or do happy people visit?
Both, all kinds. I didn't have anything of a suffering or pain or difficulty. Things just opened up very unexpectedly.
Yeah. So no dark night of the soul. Oh. Is there like a common, I don't know the real English word, but a common thing for everyone who opens up, that you could say, hey, there, now I crossed that bridge? Or is it different for everybody?
It's somewhat different for everyone. It depends what level someone's at. A really basic thing is being just really honest within, honest to see, being open to see. Liking seeing that would be really important. If you're liking seeing, then you don't have a defense within yourself against seeing something in yourself or outside of yourself.
So no more barriers between what wants to be seen or what wants to be felt, heard.
There wouldn't be a point to it. If there's a barrier there, then defense mechanisms are set up. to protect yourself from seeing what you don't want to see, and then that affects your psyche, your behavior, and you start to turn into something that's far removed from what's really helpful within.
Could you call that defense mechanism ego?
Yes.
Is there such a thing as a healthy ego?
Yes. Yeah, you see it in children, where they feel really good about achieving something or seeing something. They feel really good about themselves. So that's a special thing. Once the individuation has taken place and they come to a really healthy sense of themselves and where they are in this world, how to be with others, then when the ego continues to develop further and it turns into a deeper kind of self-importance, then that's catastrophic to a person's inner, deeper well-being.
Could you name an age where you could say, like, well, now's the time to grow up? Because I can imagine when you're a young adolescent, when you go to school, you need that ego to survive, because you need to fit in the group, you need to wear the right clothes and do the right thing and listen to the right music. Is this message also for teenagers? Or should you say, wait for this when you graduate?
No, it's easy for teenagers, easy for children.
Easy to see the ego for what it is.
Not so much seeing the ego for what it is, just realizing what's real within and what's worth responding to within. So it's easy for children to hear, it's easy for teenagers to hear.
Mm-hmm. So your message is not get rid of the ego, like some spiritual teachers tell us to do.
No, it's not about getting rid of the ego.
No.
If you try and get rid of the ego, then that doesn't address a person's orientation within.
It's just being mental, having war inside your head. Yeah. So how can I taste the difference between what's my real drive, my heart intention, however you want to call it, and what is just being in vain and satisfying my need for attention, and how can I taste the difference?
When it's real within and it addresses something of your own being, that has you opening and softening within. So it takes you out of mentalizing something, and it makes it real on an interior level. Openness and softness is crucial to a deeper sense of well-being and reaching into something that's deeper than what we're accustomed to in ourselves, deeper than our conditioning.
Does it make me a more lovable guy or a loving guy?
Yes. When you open and soften within, you naturally have empathy for others. Opening and softening within takes you out of being judgmental. It doesn't reduce the capacity to think. So you come into a deeper kind of clarity even in your thinking. Mm-hmm. And then the thinking is coming from a deeper place than what thinking on its own is. So then the thinking is serving something lovelier than what thought is.
So getting rid of thoughts, that's also not the way.
That's right.
It's the quality of thoughts you should research. Yeah.
The deeper within that you're coming from, the more that's reflected in the kind of the quality of feeling that you have within, the quality of thinking.
Being a little more critical about what you're thinking and not immediately following every thought that pops up. Could you call that maturity, or is it spiritual maturity, or?
That would be more of a self-maturity or maturity in what you are as a person. But it still doesn't address your orientation is awareness. You can have a wholesome kind of critical thought and still be sort of loosely speaking self-oriented versus being truth-oriented, where you're wanting to come from something deeper than what you recognize as yourself, because of knowing within that there is something deeper than what you're accustomed to. There's always something deeper, and then as soon as you realize that there is, then you want to be coming from that instead of coming from something that's subsequent to that.
Is there an end to that depth, or is that something that can deepen and deepen and deepen? Or would you say you have hit the bottom, or does it have a bottom, that depth?
No.
No.
There is a basic kind of shift that makes a fundamental difference, and that's living from within a perspective and an orientation that everything is as you've grown up to see it, or is as you think it is, and is as what you've experienced reality to be, or you begin to realize that there's something much deeper than your opinions, your thinking, your sense of reality. You come to know a deeper sense within, and you start to explore that, and then your whole hold on yourself starts to loosen and relax, and you start to come into a much deeper place within, and then you see others differently, and you see the world differently.
Could you say you see the world for the first time as it is, or not filtered, not colored, or
much more so?
Yeah.
And even being in nature then changes. Then instead of experiencing nature in the way that you're accustomed to, then there are deeper levels of nature opening up, so then you experience it more as a oneness. There's more of a deeper levels in your body interacting with what nature is, and that begins to mean more to you than the perception from within yourself of nature. So then the level of nurture in being in nature is deeper and greater.
So you enjoy it more, or you feel it more? Or?
Feel it more, enjoy it more, see it in a way that has more in it than what you're used to.
And does that make you, like, when you walk through the city with all kinds of buildings and no nature at all, does it make you feel less at home then? Or?
No, because when deeper levels open up within, then you have that deeper leveled relationship with whatever it is that's around you. So whether it's
bricks or plants,
bricks,
yeah,
or nature, and nature is in everything.
Also bricks and big buildings.
You can find it in anything. If you can perceive it, you'll see it.
This is wood. Once was a tree. So you see it. You see a tree instead of just a table, or
it's not. Well, I can perceive it that way, but even more than that, there's a life, a deeper life that is within everything. So then there's a deeper resonance, a capacity to, in some way, merge with what's there. There's nature in what wood is, which is not then wood anymore. It has there's a consciousness to it. So there's a possibility of being in relationship with the environment that you're in, instead of being separate from it and looking at something.
you see there's a living thing. It's not static anymore.
That's right.
Yeah. I imagine that would be nice, just walking through Amsterdam and seeing everything vibrating or full of life, instead of only recognizing it in nature. What's the main change you feel when people sit with you for like 2 or 3 hours? What's the difference between people when people walk in and people walk out?
The main difference would be people coming to a sense of a deeper restedness within, coming to a sense that there's much more to reality than what they've perceived, and being really touched by that and nurtured by that within. So then walking away and realizing that there really is more within, and having a hands-on, deeper sense of being able to access that and being at home in that, and that it's not a profound difficulty to come to a self-realization or a deeper realization than what yourself is within, so that it's all, it actually works and it's accessible. It's not complicated.
Is that the main obstacle you have to overwin? That this message in essence is so simple that you keep on searching for another few years to prove to yourself that it is that simple, that it's not difficult, more difficult.
That is a difficulty for people, because they're thinking that if something is so profound, whether they regard it as self-realization or enlightenment or whatever the term is that they have in their thinking, that the perception is that for something that is that deep and that would answer so much within, that it must be really difficult to come to it. And even though they realize at different times how simple it really is, there's still a subconscious influence of it has to be much more complicated than that. It has to be difficult. It can't be really easy and really simple.
Yeah, nothing comes for free, or that conditioning that you have to work hard to get something. So this is the most beautiful and simplest message of all, but we still overlook it. Or
yes, and it's also a difficulty for people in really realizing something that is so lovely within, to let go of the things that they're holding on to. So then letting go of being in disagreement with something so lovely within.
Is that it? That you're disagreeing with that inner sense?
Well, if there's, you can have a deeper inner sense and at the same time be holding on to something in yourself and not want to let go of that because there's an emotional attachment to it or a mental attachment to it.
Do you point to like belongings, your wife, your children, or the mental concept you have of yourself? All of that?
Yes, and a little bit deeper than that. Believing that you need to have what you think you have. Mm-hmm. So the believing that you need to keep it, you need to secure it for yourself, instead of just relaxing within and enjoying what's there and being in the deeper nature of what you have, instead of seeing it as a surface thing, a surface something, and locking onto that.
So I shouldn't get rid of all belongings, my wife, my children, and then I can realize this. It's not, that's not the right way.
That would create an impediment.
How you mean?
An impediment that would, in a way, that would make a person worse, because they'd be believing something that they're not knowing the truth of, believing something they perceive. Mm-hmm. That everything they have is in the way, so then believing to get rid of it all. And if you get rid of it all you've done is really secured a belief, secured something that you're not actually knowing the truth of. So then that's strengthened a misperception.
So you could call it a spiritual ego, or yeah. So could the final question be, or is the final question, can this be found in the world?
Yes.
Because I searched for happiness in the world, couldn't find it. So yeah, all the things on the surface you could find, but how do I find it in the world then?
In the midst of being in the world. You can find it in the world just as you can find it in nature. When you're in nature, there's a natural response. It's a lot easier in nature. There's a natural response because there's a beingness that you're relating to in nature, and there's mm-hmm. a nectar in that, there's a nurture in that. When you're in the world, it's more difficult to perceive because there are things competing with what you're feeling and what you're thinking. But as soon as you begin to become rested within, even somewhat in the way that you are in the midst of nature, then your perception changes in the midst of this world. Then you begin to see differently what's outside of you, because what you're coming from within is a little bit different.
So I don't have to meditate for 10 hours a day to see this or to deepen this, or
Meditation helps. Ultimately, it isn't what works. When you begin to meditate, you begin to realize something within that matters more than what you've perceived in yourself. As soon as you realize that, then you don't need to meditate. Now you can just be what it is that you were realizing. The tendency is that when something begins to work, that you continue with the technique instead of being in what you were realizing within the technique.
Do you come to Amsterdam every year, or is it just now a rare opportunity to see you in person?
For now, each year.
Okay, because this weekend you give how do you call it yourself? A retreat, a satsang, a meeting?
Meetings.
Meetings. Meetings in truth, or?
Not even that.
No. Is there such a thing as truth in words?
Yes, just as there is truth in feeling and truth in thinking. The reality of it is limited to the depth within that you're coming from. So the more deeply you've realized the truth of something, the more your thinking then is able to work for what you're coming from.
So again, the quality of thoughts grows. Does the quality of feelings also grow?
Yes.
Everything grows.
Everything becomes much finer, and there's much more of the exquisite that's perceived and felt.
So could you compare it to eating at McDonald's and then eating at a 3-star restaurant? Better quality of taste, everything, sight.
Or, yes, or eating a homegrown carrot or tomato, or eating something that's been force grown.
Yeah.
There isn't nearly the same kind of flavor.
Do people get angry at these kind of meetings? Do they stand up and say, well, go to hell? Or how does it work?
It can happen. That'd be pretty rare.
Or is there always like a peaceful atmosphere? I imagine feelings come up, feelings of anger, feelings of do people cry a lot at your meetings? Maybe after half an hour or an hour?
That can easily happen.
Yeah.
A person can be easily quite teary because of being really touched within and beginning to open within and realizing something that really matters, and all of a sudden it's really working.
Is there like an aftercare of people? Because I can imagine when you hear this message for the first time, you're flabbergasted. You walk out of the room and someone has to take your hand and say, let me walk you to the bus, to the station.
Not really. It's not unseating someone's mind. It's just taking their awareness deeper within.
Yeah.
Instead of being a person, realizing they're a self, and instead of being a self, realizing that they have a heart, and instead of just having a heart, realizing that they're knowing the truth of something in their heart, and they're just taken deeper and deeper, that there's always a deeper level.
Yeah. You don't throw them into the deep and say, go swim. No. Because there are some teachers who are so radical that we hear stories of people who visit them and they stay there for an hour and they can't go to work the next week because they're so confused. So that's something you watch over, but people don't get too confused.
It's not a mental approach, it's more of a heart approach.
Mm-hmm. But it can be mentalized. Oh, now I have to do this and that, and I don't have to use my name anymore. No, don't call me Patrick. Call me consciousness. No. So you could say
that would be more of a mental trip.
Yeah.
Putting someone into a mental trip.
So you could say the people who visit your talks are a little into the subject, that they don't get crazy about this and start doing crazy things.
It's the whole focus is taken away from concepts that tease the mind and going into some kind of mental trip. It's more realizing something that you actually know the truth of within. So it's not about being impressed by a higher concept or a deeper concept, but realizing something that works right now, and immediately there's a restedness, a settledness within, and a capacity to open and soften and be much more relaxed within and knowing something deeper than what you're accustomed to.
So
And there's a nurture to that.
less craziness. Final, anything you want to ask me?
No?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.